how's it going? Welcome to my channel. My name is Elise and this is Read 'em and Weep. Today I'm drinking some apple cider. I'm feeling the fall vibes completely. I don't know what it is. I went to Target this weekend and they had all the fall stuff and I have just been feeling so fall ever since then. I'm so excited. I love the fall. Anyways, so today we're going to be talking about my favorite books. So I figured because I'm still new here on YouTube, just so you can get a feel for my reading taste and what I like, I'm going to go over my favorite books of all time. These are my absolute favorites. I have 7 books here that I'm going to talk about, and this video I'm not going to be really giving too much like plot and things like that. This is really just going to be one big like gush session. I'm just going to be like loving on these books and telling you why I love them so much, because these are my favorites. These books are the books that have carved their way into my heart. These books mean so much to me. If I had to get rid of all of my books tomorrow, these are the ones that like I would fight someone over to keep, because these books are like, they mean everything to me. So the first one that we're going to start with is the one that I feel like is almost on everyone's favorite books of all time list. It's an amazing book. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. As you can see, mine is like super tabbed up. I love that book. I've read it a couple times. I think I read it back in 2019 and I really just fell in love with Evelyn Hugo, Monique, the whole story. I went in not knowing anything, and I think that that's like one of the reasons how come I loved it so much, is because I didn't know what to expect, and it really just like completely went above anything that I could have ever imagined it, being. I loved it. Evelyn Hugo is a really unlikable character, but I just love kind of going back and hearing about her life. And I think one of the things that I completely love about this book is that it's like very like atmospheric. Like I 100% felt like I was in like old Hollywood, the way that things are described, movie sets and everything. Like it's so atmospheric. I can completely visualize every single thing that's happening, the award shows or the movie sets, even like thinking about like the slime balls in Hollywood and things like that. Like all of these things, it just felt so real. And I think that that's what I really love about this, is just how real it feels. So that's one of my favorite books of all time. I loved it. I've read it a couple of times. I need to do a reread, and it always makes me cry. This book always makes me cry. So yeah. Okay, so another book that is my favorite is Anger is a Gift by Mark Oshiro. This is the only book that I've read by this author, although I think he has other books. But that book is so amazing. It is extremely heartbreaking. This book is extremely heartbreaking. You are dealing with so much grief throughout this book. And it starts out one way, and then like halfway through it like completely takes a turn, and I was not expecting anything that happened, and it just broke my heart, and I could just feel everything that the characters were going through. It's so heartbreaking. I guess this one I feel like maybe was popular a few years ago, but it's not something that I hear talked about a lot on BookTube, so I will give just like a brief summary. So we have Moss here. He is a student at a school, and the school is like starting to do some weird things, like having police in the schools, putting up like metal detectors and things like that. And these students have not done anything to deserve being treated like criminals. And so him and his friends decide that they want to protest against, you know, what the school is doing to them. And unfortunately, tragedy happens, and he really has to figure out, you know, he's really really angry about what happened and what is happening and how they're being treated. And he kind of discovers that, you know, you can use anger for a good thing. You know, it doesn't always have to be so negative. You can really like harvest that and make change. And that's one of the things that I really loved about this book, is just talking about that anger piece and how you can do something good with it. Especially for me being African American, you know, in today's society, there have been a lot of tragedies that have happened, and it does make you angry. But, you know, just knowing and like reading this and knowing that you can harvest that and you can, you know, turn your anger into something positive. And this is a book that I would 100%, you know, want teenagers to read, because this is young adult, you know, and they are students, and I feel like teenagers would definitely be able to relate to that book. For a teen to be able to see that their anger has power, I think would just be amazing. That book, it's so good. It is very heartbreaking, and I would say like huge trigger warnings for grief. It is something that really, I mean, from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, there is grief mentioned all about. It is an extremely heartbreaking book. My next all-time favorite books, I have two that are by the same author, and that is Anxious People and A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. Now, Anxious People is actually the very first Frederick Bachman that I read. Loved it. It was amazing. Which then sparked me into this journey of reading all of his books, which I'm almost done. I only have just 3 left that I need to read. And so after this one, I read A Man Called Ove and absolutely loved it. You can see I have this one all tabbed up as well. These books are amazing. Frederick Bachman's writing is literally impeccable. It's amazing. It's very easy to read, and he has a way of writing that makes you want to keep reading and not stop. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like very charismatic. It's very witty. It's very funny. I don't know. He's a very good writer. So basically, Anxious People is about a bank robber who goes in to rob a bank, but it's a cashless bank, and then runs out and then runs into the nearest open door, which turns out to be a open house for an apartment. And then the bank robbery turns into a hostage situation is basically what it's about. But throughout the book, you are getting perspectives from the bank robber, you're getting perspectives from the hostages in the open house, you're getting perspective from the police officers, and you're really just finding out how everything weaves together. Really really good. Amazing. This book, despite it being about our bank robber, I related. I'm not a bank robber, but I related so much to this book. The things that were said, the things about like parenting and all of that. Like, it was so good. I related so much. Yeah. And then A Man Called Ove is about a man who honestly is like really crabby all the time, like literally just crabby his whole entire life. And he gets a new neighbor. It's a family, they have little girls, and it's kind of about how these new neighbors kind of show up in his life and kind of wiggle their way into his heart a little bit. um I loved it. Ove by far is one of my favorite characters of all time. He is a jerk. He's like racist. He's terrible. He's absolutely terrible. um but I don't have to like a character to love them. He's not a good guy, but he has been through a lot. He starts to change throughout the book. He definitely changes throughout the book. This book had me in tears. Oh my goodness, so much. So much. And now, the one thing about this book that I had to get over is I think he's supposed to be like 59 or something like that. He reads much older. And so once I kind of got past that age for him and kind of just was like, nope, he's, 80. He's 80 to me. I was able to really love this book. And as someone who I have worked with the older population pretty much since my very first job. My very first job I had at 16 was in a nursing home, and I worked there for years. And even right now, I still work with the older community. So I have a soft spot for um, older people as it is. And so um this book, I just I loved, I loved getting his backstory. I loved, watching him change as a person. And it's just amazing. And I think it's because I do have that soft spot for older people that made this book wiggle its way into my heart. Because it's very good. I will say this one has a huge trigger warning for like suicidal ideation for sure. So know that going in, because it is something that is prevalent throughout the entire book, and it's a lot. My next favorite books are two books that are by the same author as well, and that is Transcendent Kingdom and Homegoing by Ya Jesse. And actually, for Homegoing, I have two copies of Homegoing. Yeah, these books are so good. So you have Homegoing. This book is about two sisters in Africa during the 1700s. One gets sold into slavery, and the other marries a white Englishman. And you are following their lineage, I think, for like 9 generations, and following their lineage. And you really get to see the differences between the lineage and the way that the lives go versus, the family that stays in Africa, for years and years and years, and the family who gets sold into slavery and are slaves for a few generations, and then the struggles that they go through getting out of slavery and just like living in America, up until present day for both. It is such a good book. So each chapter, so like the first chapter you start with one sister, and then the next sister, and then the next chapter is the next generation, and then the next chapters are the next generation. So it's goes in that timeline. So you're only staying with each character for one chapter. That may not be something that people love. I myself am a very character driven reader. I mean, as you could probably tell, everything that I'm talking about characters. I am an extremely character driven reader, and I didn't know if I was going to like this, since I only get to stay with each character for one chapter, but I loved it because it still felt very character driven, because it's like a family. I'm just following one family. And so it still felt, I still felt very close to the characters, because I felt like, you know, I know your great 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 grandma, like, so like I still felt very close to each character. This book is amazing. Honestly, as you can see, this copy is like all um tabbed up, and I got a new copy because I want to go through and retab, because the symbolism and like everything throughout this book is impeccable. There are so many things that you just gotta highlight. You gotta highlight it's so good. Yeah, it's very good. It kind of reminds me of like Roots and things like that, where you're kind of like going through the generations. But it's very good, and I honestly feel like it needs to be like required reading, because it really shows the differences and how slavery has affected, you know, African Americans. But also, it shows that, like, just because people in Africa who didn't become slaves didn't mean that they had a perfect life. They had their own struggles, they had things going on as well. And it shows, like, both things. And it also, to me, one thing it really highlights is how slavery still impacts people to this day. And when you get to see it laid out generation by generation, and you see the struggle that it was like getting out of slavery, and then you see the struggle that the next generation had because their parents were slaves, and then you see the struggle that the next generation has because they were raised by people who like ex-slaves, and then it's a good book. And then Transcendent Kingdom by Y'all Jesse. So Transcendent Kingdom is about Gifty, and she is a neuroscientist, but she is also dealing with anxiety, depression. She's also dealing with her mother, who also has anxiety and depression, and also grieving the loss of her brother to addiction. And in a way, she's grieving through science. And so becoming a neuroscientist is kind of a way for her to understand what is happening in the brain, a way of understanding what happened with her brother, what's happening with her, what's happening with her mom. This is a very good book. It is a very good book. There are some quotes in here that I 100% related to so much. Like, there were things said in here that I then sparked conversations that I've had with my own mom, because of something that was said in here. And then, we are connecting on something. And as you can see, this version is all tabbed up. I have read this one a couple of times as well. I've read Homegoing a couple of times as well too. But it's so good. And I think the reason I love this book is because I relate so much to some of the things that Gifty is going through. I myself have anxiety, depression, and I have had family who have suffered with addiction, and so I know some of those struggles. Thankfully, I haven't lost anyone to addiction, but just to see like people struggle, and then also, for it to be your family and feeling like, is it hereditary and things like that, like, because that's something that she does talk about a little bit in here. I have related to that so much. It is one of the reasons how come I do not drink alcohol, is because of the fear that I will become an alcoholic. And she talks about that in here. There is a quote from this book. Oh trying to think of exactly how it goes, where she says like the reason how come she's never tried drugs is because she feels like drugs or addiction is like a man in a trench coat waiting in a dark alley for you to let your guard down. And I have never felt so seen ever. That quote hit me straight in the gut because that is exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel. And that's why I love this book so much. There are so many moments like this where it's like, is Ya Jesse like in my brain stealing how I feel? Like it's so relatable to me. Okay. And lastly, my last favorite book of all time is A Woman Is No Man by Edith Rom. I don't know what to say. This is I would say young adult because you're following a teenager, but some of the things that happen here are like extremely adult. So you are following 3 generations of women, and you're also following like 2 different timelines. So you're following in 1990 Palestine, and then also in New York. You're following Farida. She marries a man who then brings her to New York. And then you're following her daughter. I want to say it's like pronounced Daya, in 2008. And she's, a teenager. She's like 17. And so you're following her in Brooklyn. But then you also get some perspective from the grandmother as well, kind of sprinkled throughout, but you're mostly following the two. And so you're following these 2 women. Now, Farida, she gets married, she moves to New York, and is expecting this amazing life. She's expecting things to be extremely different from how they are in Palestine. And she gets here and she quickly realizes that's not the case. She's dealing with her husband and his family. She's not allowed to leave the house by herself. And they're putting all of these expectations on her to like have children and things like that. And then she has her daughter, Daya. I don't know how to say it. So she has her daughter, and she's dealing with them being extremely disappointed that she had a daughter and not a son. And then she has another child, and she has a daughter. And then she has another child, and it's a daughter. And slowly but surely, she starts to go through a depression. Her husband is becoming more and more and more violent with her as she keeps having daughters. Her mother-in-law is extremely upset that she keeps having daughters. Everybody's placing the blame on her, and it's like a terrible situation. So that's kind of the situation with Frida. And then you're following Dea in 2008. Both of her parents are deceased, and you are finding out what happened, and you're going back and forth between these 2 timelines. It is an extremely heartbreaking read, but I think the main reason how come I loved this book, is because I once again fell in love with the characters. And Dea is a character who, once again, to me, does not feel like is a character, but is like a real person. And I just wish that I could like get her phone number and call her up and be like, are you okay? Are you good? Do you need something? Like, I'm here for you, baby girl. Like, this is I don't know. I don't know. Like, this book is amazing to me, and I love Dea as a character. And I also loved Farida as a character, and it was extremely heartbreaking to see her go from hopeful, it's gonna be a better life, to like going through the ringer, going through it, and ultimately like going through a major depression to the point of like just being blank, being a shell of a person, to see that transformation throughout the book is heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking to see the things that she has to go through. And then it's also heartbreaking to see the memories that Daya has of her mom, and like thinking that her mom was a shell of a person, not realizing how hopeful and full of life her mom once was, and not remembering that about her. I don't know. I loved it. It's an amazing book. So those are my favorite books of all time. They're amazing. I highly recommend all of them. Like, these are the books. Oh my goodness, wait. These are the books, like, if I had to say, like, what's my brand, these are the books that I 100% want people to associate with me. These books right here. Ah, it's heavy. I love them. They're so amazing. I love all of these books so much. All of those books are good. They've all touched my heart in some way. It's mostly the characters. I love those characters so much. They don't feel fake to me. In fact, I think that's what all of these books have in common. I think all of these books have in common the fact that these characters feel so real. Every single last one of them feel like a real person to me. And I think that must be my bread and butter of what makes a good book. I don't even know if I use that saying correctly. But so those are my favorite books of all time. Hopefully that lets you get to know me and my reading taste a little bit more, possibly. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you loved any of these. Don't let me know if you've hated these books, because I don't want to hear it. Just kidding. But yeah, let me know if you've read one of these and if you've loved them. And also, if you want to see more videos from me, go ahead and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.